welcome to the Friday night stream of the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. As we get started with a little bit of Geoguessr, I just have a couple of thoughts that have been just on my mind. This whole situation has been doing my head in lately. And this is just some stuff that I jotted down that I think would be a good idea for all of us to just give some thought of. Maybe people already probably are. But it seems important to say it. Just stating what should be obvious by now. The only way we're ever going to sort out COVID-19 in the US is with a mass social movement that directly combats the class that's profiting so heavily from dragging this thing out forever. Public health authorities have given up all pretext of caring about public health. All levels of government are outright encouraging people to get infected. Media downplay the disaster until the consequences are impossible to ignore, and resume downplaying it immediately after. The propaganda at this point is downright insulting. Just change the color of the COVID maps, even though there's been no such change in community levels, transmission, or deaths. They don't even bother to lie with sophistication. Meanwhile, people are dying. In the US, even by official underestimates, we averaged over 60,000 dead a month in the first 2 months of this year, before new metrics aimed at reducing official counts were implemented. These deaths are needless. We know how to prevent them. We've known how to prevent them for the better part of 2 years now, but prevention isn't profitable. Dragging the pandemic out indefinitely while people are needlessly killed and debilitated, on the other hand, turns out to be a fucking goldmine. It's time we spoke plainly. The fight against this pandemic, and the next one, is a fight against the bosses and their state, and it needs to be treated as such. I don't claim to have all the answers on how to go about that, though it does seem like strikes, school walkouts, and lots of mutual aid would probably be pretty indispensable in any effort, as well as good public information to counter the fact that there's basically no reliable official information in this country. All I'm saying, though, is that it's past time that those of us who claim to be revolutionaries, and I include myself in that, figured out how to get this thing going. We need to make pandemic resistance a focus of our organizing and propaganda efforts wherever we are. And the thing is, it ties in with literally any issue that we might be working on. You're working on police abolition? Well, I'm sure you've heard, this isn't news, that the cops fucking, no matter what anyone does with standing orders or policies or anything, the motherfuckers refuse to get vaccinated, refuse to get masked. They're going around spreading the shit and just shitting all over public safety. If you're talking about anti-racism, well, I mean, this is a fucking racist pandemic. The whole management of it is racist. And it turns out when you tell white people correctly that it's people of color who are the most likely to suffer the worst consequences, that reduces their willingness to consider any kind of public health precautions. Talking about immigration and abolishing ICE, well, ICE is fucking deporting people who are actively infectious to other countries, which is not only horrible for those people, but also sabotages other countries' fucking pandemic prevention efforts. It ties in with literally everything, because literally everything we're dealing with deals with human beings, and this is shit that affects human beings. It ties in with everything. We need to create a climate where we can shut down the main sites of transmission, which, by all indications, are schools and workplaces, with or without the approval of the bosses in the state. Only if we achieve this do we have any chance of putting an end to a pandemic that could have been over by early 2021 if the people in charge of the response had given half a fuck about us. We also need to be very clear that what happens with COVID here in the US has a direct effect on the situation in the rest of the world, even in the countries that have actually done a decent job controlling the plague. When a country as big as the US offers itself up as a safe space for new variants to develop and propagate undetected, those variants will necessarily harm public health efforts elsewhere, and they have. When a country with uncontrolled COVID transmission insists on deporting people who are actively infectious, not only commits a crime against the individuals, but also sabotages the public health efforts of the countries to which they're being deported. There's no individualism in this. There's no individual solution, either individual countries or as individual people. And we need to be making that clear to everyone, since there's this whole propaganda effort to treat this as some sort of individualistic thing. Because protecting yourself from infection is literally protecting others from infection, because it means if you don't get it, other people can't get it from you. It's all fucking connected, because it's literally in the air we breathe. Letting the pandemic run rampant here in the US kills people in other countries. Fighting it here will save lives in other countries. A social movement to impose the COVID precautions we needed from the start is not just an act of self-preservation, but of international solidarity. And I say, let's get stuck in. Let's just fucking do it. Let's at the very least start working on what we ought to be doing. And with that, let's get into some Geoguessr. Where is my fucking Geoguessr? Ah, there we go. Okay, I'm immediately thinking, oh, stay America. Well, that certainly narrows it down. Yeah, I'm gonna guess we're in the US. That wonderful disease-infected country that I was just talking about. Oh, tea. Extended stay America. Oh, fucking hell, I wasn't asking you to do that. Wait, is there no other way for me to... Can't I just go straight on, damn it? Okay. Feels kind of Midwestern. Actually feels a little bit like St. Louis, but I don't think it is. I had a bit of an epiphany. This is not related to what I was just talking about. Just the other day, as I was watching a channel called Zamani Zulu, which if you're trying to learn isiZulu is a great channel. I would highly recommend it. See, what they do is TPRS-based instruction in Zulu by game streaming. See, TPRS is this idea that you learn through, well, it's a method based on the idea that you learn languages. Gateway Oaks, 916 area code. That is Sacramento. I knew Gateway Oaks sounded California. Okay, Gateway Oaks Drive in Sacramento. Near an extended stay America. Well, so what this guy at Zamani Zulu does is stream games and just narrate them in Zulu as comprehensible input for people who are trying to learn the language. And it occurred to me that actually my favorite little online game here is perfect for this. It is absolutely perfect, because all TPRS classes, what they're essentially doing, particularly in the earlier levels, is you've got a picture there and then you talk about it. And people just sort of absorb your discussion of what's going on. The picture is there to help make what you're saying more comprehensible by giving a reference point. And so I'm thinking on my other channel, my language channel, I might start streaming Geoguessr in different languages as sort of a TPRS thing. I don't know shit about Sacramento. Well, I mean, that is the capital of California and that, but where anything is, I don't know. Larks spur woods. Do larks have spurs? Is that how larks work? I didn't think larks had spurs. What kind of fucking larks do they have in Northern California? Adagio. There's a building by that name in LA. I seem to remember. One of the city's major gentrification projects. Wonder if it's related. Oh, tea. Yeah, we are definitely in the 916. Museum of Science and Curiosity. Okay, I just love that name. I know nothing about it, but that immediately makes me very, well, curious about it. Which I suppose is not a bad achievement for a museum of curiosity. I guess it's where you go if you're curious about curiosity. Very philosophical. Industrial stone. Poverty Ridge. That's a lovely name for a neighborhood. Okay, where the hell? Someplace in Sacramento, anyway. Slough House? Slough House? Gotta give me something more than this. Metro Center, West El Camino. Metro Center. So it doesn't really look like there's much to it. Gateway Oaks into El Camino. And a speedway. Ah, come on, give me something. This is like the most nondescript... No, I shouldn't say that, because I've had some seriously much more nondescript places I've been to on Geoguessr than this. Okay, it's going over a river of some kind. The Sacramento River, I wouldn't wonder. Okay. There must be a bridge over it someplace. Capitol Mall. First Street Bridge, that isn't it. Jaboom Street Bridge. American River, well that's rather grandiose somehow. I mean, surely there are a few of those. Howard Avenue, wait, what's that? Fair Oaks. After Gateway Oaks. Gateway Oaks aren't necessarily fair. Riverbend Park. Sunrise, that ain't it. Okay, where else could this possibly... Coniston... Richmond Grove... 사이스워기에 기쁨과 아픔 함께 나누며 같이 가네. .7 miles, despite no decent indicators for anyone who isn't familiar with the town. Okay. We got council workers We got yellow number plates, I see. And we've got a bin van that moves away as you get closer. But here we've got some Hebrew. Okay, that narrows it down. Central. Ma'alot. Okay. It's interesting, most of the time, when Geoguessr has dropped me in this part of the world, it drops me in what appear to be the mostly Palestinian areas. But not this time. It doesn't seem... Anyway. Lazak. Bezek. Hashrion. Chov Hashivyon. Less Shirion, more Shivyon, I would say. English. It's times like this when I am actually surprised by how much Hebrew I know and unsurprised by how little I know. Coffee's gone cold. Okay, that's worth noticing. The stop sign that's just a hand. I have never seen that anywhere else, except in the original movie of The Handmaid's Tale. Coffee. Goula. Okay, this feels like a kind of a station type building, or shopping center anyway. Some sort of weird ass public art. Sort of like an octopus, I guess, or Akiva, Ha'ela. I mean, this does have the feeling of a major city. Okay, let's see. We got public transport here. Any sign of what city it is? Let's see. Taxi. Okay, I feel like we're moving towards the city center. There's gonna have to be something that says where we are. Kfar Saba. That is a name that is familiar. Herzliya. Okay, Kfar Saba, Tel Aviv. Okay, we're in Tel Aviv. Okay, that's the first time we've actually been dropped there. Okay, and we're on the road to Kfar Saba. Geffen, Givatayim. Kfar Shalem, Neve Golan. Sheikh Muniz, Hadar Yosef. Okay, where? Kfar Saba. Kfar Kasem. Herzliya. Okay, where's okay. There's Herzliya. So I'm gonna guess it's just in the north there someplace. .7 miles, not too bad. And now Route 720 on a circular sign, and it looks like it wasn't painted on quite right. Okay, that tells me I believe we're in the US. Looks like the US. Ah. Mercy Missionary Baptist Church. Okay, yeah. Still looking like the US. That's looking illegible. Post office. Oh, post office. That's handy. Because that will have a zip code on it, won't it? God, that resolution just went way down. Oh, but here we are, a post office. Jesus, this is totally illegible. This is really rather impressive. I've not... Is it gonna all be like this? Oh, shit. Let's make sure everything else is working. Okay, we seem to have some decent screen resolution now. Touch wood. Now it'd be nice to get some signs again. That post office was going to be really handy because those usually have the zip code right on the outside of the building. Little Light Missionary Baptist Church. Shed a little light on where you are, little light. Come on. Railway property, P&L. P&L Railway. Oh, speaking of company names with P and an ampersand in them, which I suppose we are. I don't know if anyone watching this has been following the saga with P&O, but that's going Oh, fucking hell. Ron Paul for president. Oh, hello, Phoenix. Good to see you. Are you hearing me okay? So, P&O decided to just sack their entire staff, all their crews, via video link with no notice or anything, and then just sent fucking security with tasers and handcuffs to drag them off the ship. And they were going to replace them with agency workers as scabs, people making like £3 an hour or less. Except that pretty much the entire all the maritime trade workers in Europe have been standing in solidarity with the P&O workers. Excellent. Something community center. And so P&O have been having a hell of a time even getting their ships to be cleared to dock or depart. People are refusing to load them. People are refusing to work on them. They've had agency workers refuse when they found out they were being used as scabs. It's a beautiful thing. So, if I had a link to where to support the P&O workers, I would supply it, but I haven't seen it, and which surprises me. I would imagine if there is one, I would have seen it by now. But it's just a nice piece of good working people news. Just watching fucking P&O, who handle, among other things. Oh god, there's nothing in this one. Okay, I'm gonna say someplace in the south. Only 163 miles off, given how little I had to go on. I would say that's not bad. Hereford Drive, Twickenham. Somebody was going for Twickenham, and they got Twickenham, which is like how Philomena Kunk would pronounce it. How are you doing tonight, Phoenix? Okay, we are in some very suburban North American sort of place. I don't know if you heard a minute ago, but I was talking about something I'm thinking of getting started on my other channel, on my language channel, where I would be streaming Geoguessr in different languages as comprehensible input for language learners. So I would stream Geoguessr kind of like I'm doing now, but in Spanish or German or Japanese or Korean or whatever. Play a round of it. So, to give people something to listen to, a description that allows their language acquisition devices, as scientists call it, to sort of work their way through the language. No parking here to corner. That does not help. Okay, that looks like some sort of public-ish building. I thought you might be interested in it. Yeah, so I haven't completely decided when I might do that. So I don't want to have all my streaming into one area, into like one chunk. I'd like to have some breaks in between. And I don't know what time of day would be best for it, but it seems like it might be a cool idea, and I'd like to do it. In a way, my favorite online game is sort of ideal. for this sort of language instruction, because all I'm doing is, looking at pictures and talking about it. Wilbur Puckett. God, that is like a perfect name from a fucking Steinbeck novel. Auction 765. That's Muncie, Indiana, I think. So I think that's what the Sally Mae fucking calls from. Yep, Central Indiana. I remember that area code well because the only fuckers who've ever called me from a 765 area code are fucking Sally Mae. Or Navient, whatever the pricks call themselves now. Ah, somebody's getting foreclosed apparently. Lovely. Okay, so the trouble with the 765 area code is you look on the map and it covers a huge chunk of Indiana. Ah, come on. Give me something more. Okay. Okay, another big public building type thing. Looks like a distribution center or warehouse or something. What time would be best for you for something like that, do you reckon? Pizza King, banquet room, RHS. Purdue, okay. Muncie Guns. 'kay, Ball State, Best Western Muncie, Applebee's. Applebee's would fucking... I'm in Eastern too. Okay, yeah, I think that's doable. Because I think the way I would do it is I would just do a round of Geoguessr. So it would just be like, I would do 5 of them. You know, just do 1 round and that would be it for the day. And then do it maybe once or twice during the week. In different languages. Crestview Golf Club, FedEx Shit Center. .1 miles, 49.83, not bad. Okay. Sala treningowa. We are in Poland. Najlepsze mieszkania, Bonifraterska, Centrum Łowicza. Łowicz. I don't know where the hell Łowicz is, but we will find out. I mean, obviously it's Łódź. Otwock. Żyrardów, Pruszków, Wołomin. Łowicka spółdzielnia. Najlepiej ubrane meble w Polsce. Kromburg. Okay. So we're in some place called Łowicz, which seems to be at least a mid-sized city. It's Dunska. Wszystkiego. Groszek, sklep drops. Słowackiego. Okay, so definitely Łowicz. A Łowicz! There we go. Łowicz. Zdunska. Okay, Mostowa. Łowicz Główny. Blich. Oh, da. 566 yards. Wow, 2 points short of the full. Oh, I did well considering how many times I had no fucking idea where I was. 24,125. Ooh. This bloody tea has gone cold. Okay. Yeah, I see. He's platformed the same turf. I mean, now he has no fucking excuse.
So if you guys want to introduce yourself, Destiny.
Hey, I'm Destiny. I play video games, and I
Have a very, very annoying voice.
sometimes talk about politics and sometimes philosophy, and woohoo, that's what I do. Okay.
Yes.
There
Yeah,
you go.
well, along with, another choice asshole.
Okay, well, I'm Caleb Muppet. I'm a journalist and political analyst and an advocate.
Yeah, I actually, after the last time, did some looking into his little fucking think tank. His, Mask of the Red Death had asked a pretty good question, where he was getting the money for all this shit. And it turns out it actually, from what I can tell, there isn't much of a budget at all for it. He does not have separate. See, I don't know about that. And the thing is, he's also pathetic, but on the other hand, he's pathetic in an often ridiculously amusing way. And he's really trying to synthesize some sort of connection with, like, outright fascists between, like, the left and just outright fascists like the LaRouchites in real time. And that makes it interesting as well. Yeah. And the thing is, as Sophie from Mars observed a couple of weeks ago, every time Caleb Muppet goes onto one of these debates, goes onto one of these debate bro streams, the debate bros have the effect of making Caleb Muppet look more knowledgeable by comparison, which doesn't take much.
Century socialism.
Okay. So how do we want to go first? Do you maybe we want to define some terms?
Well,
Caleb, maybe you want to go ahead and define your terms
sure.
on what socialism is?
Well,
Okay, this should be interesting.
I want to start out now. Can I call you Steve? Is that how you like to be addressed?
Yeah,
Steven?
Steven is good. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Well, I really like what you do. I'm a big fan of your channel.
Oh, fucking hell, really? Okay, yeah, Jesus, he sucks. I mean, Destiny, apart from just being. Like, the one good thing Destiny did was he outed a couple of big streamers as white nationalists, which was cool. It was good that he did that. If he'd stuck to that, rather than outing himself as also kind of a fucking white nationalist, who stands Kyle Rittenhouse and other shit, I do, you'd say that you would say that he was a net positive, but instead he's gone on to be a complete reactionary dickball. So naturally, Caleb Maupin's a big fan. And look at him, he's all lighting up.
Because I love the United States of America, and I'm deeply worried about the future and the fact that.
Oh, see, God, when he gets on this shit, I was watching Luna Oy, and she didn't mention him by name. She's talking about so-called communists who are, like, fucking wanking to the American flag and the Star-Spangled Banner, and how, from her perspective as somebody whose country has been wrecked by U.S. imperialism, it kind of turns her stomach, and it's like, yeah, a bit. You can't be fucking anti-imperialist and say shit like this.
That you are facilitating discussion that is civil. You're not encouraging people to go out and punch each other and get violent over this kind of thing, but we're having.
Well, I mean, he did kind of say it was cool when Kyle Rittenhouse went and shot some people because he didn't like what they were protesting about. So, I mean, he isn't exactly against violence.
Civil intellectual discourse about very important concepts. I really like that. And I'm really honored to be here, and I'm glad you've taken this opportunity to engage with me. And I thought I might begin this debate, actually, by quoting some of the words of a very radical socialist who existed back in 1892. He wrote these words.
Oh, who the fuck is it going to be? It's gonna be that Bellamy prick. The one who invented the Pledge of Allegiance.
I think some of the viewers may be familiar with these words. They go like this. I pledge allegiance to...
Fucking hell, he's doing it. What in the fuck? Like, okay. How many sharks is he jumping right now?
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Like, Jesus Christ. Like, what's the strategy here? Is he, like, trying to put fucking Destiny to sleep? What the fuck is this? He gets more ridiculous every time.
The author of the Pledge of Allegiance, Francis Bellamy, was a socialist. Furthermore...
Not exactly. He was a fervent nationalist who also had some social democratic ideas. Yeah, he called himself a socialist, and they, but, yeah, he was sort of one of those national kind of socialists. In fact, his idea for the salute to go with the Pledge of Allegiance is called the Bellamy Salute. Let me put it this way. You can actually get arrested for giving the Bellamy Salute in Germany because of who else's fucking salute it is.
Abraham Lincoln had a general, a brigadier general in the Union Army named August Willich, who was not only a socialist, but a personal friend of Karl Marx. Of course...
Okay, who gives... See, I mean, so he was supposed to be starting by defining terms. Instead, he's, like, talking about fucking Abraham Lincoln's fucking staff.
Bonded with him throughout the war. Roosevelt frequently met with labor activists, progressives, and members of the Socialist Party and the Communist Party at the White House. And this notion that somehow, if you believe in socialism, you believe that the banks, factories, and industries should be organized to serve public good and not profits. This notion that...
Oh, notice how he skips the bit about being controlled by the working class, which is kind of fucking important. That's kind of the difference between socialism and fucking social democracy, dude.
Somehow makes you un-American, or makes you a foreign agent, or makes you a traitor, or somehow opposed to what it means to be an American. This is a...
Why is that a bad thing? Look, I mean, the whole concept of Americanism is such a hot pile of shit that the idea that I am seen as antithetical to it by standing for something decent, I don't actually see why that's a bad thing. Because the point is, there's nothing wrong with being antithetical to something that sucks shit. And Americanism sucks shit. It's I mean, and to hear him who, like, accuses other people who have a much better line on this particular aspect, and would not say the fucking Pledge of Allegiance of imperialism. I mean, it's just, he's fucking comic relief. It's like, you have trouble believing he's for real.
Fiction. It's a fiction that's been peddled by William Randolph Hearst, by Rupert Murdoch, by Roger Ailes, but the truth is that socialists...
Well, not just them. I mean, yes, the right-wing media, but also, like, all the other fucking media. And he was supposed to be defining what socialism means to him, and he hasn't yet. In fact, I've never... Well, he kind of did. He said socialism means social democracy.
Been an important part of U.S. history. We organized to oppose slavery. We were supporters of...
We did? See, I don't think that you were involved in those organizing meetings, Caleb. I have a feeling that shit happened before you were born.
Abraham Lincoln. We organized to build the labor movement.
I mean, God, this guy is so modest. He just inserts himself into shit that happened decades or even centuries before he was born. We organized to abolish slavery. No, we fucking didn't. We would like to think that we would have been doing that if we'd been around at the time, maybe, but we fucking didn't, because we fucking weren't there.
The suffrage movement, the right of women to vote. We've always been part of this country, and I think that advocating common sense rather than the irrationality of profits is a fundamental part of U.S. experience. We've always been around.
A fundamental part of U.S. experience. What does that even mean, actually?
In fact, the word socialism, which was first from the French, Henry Saint-Simon, the utopian thinker, coined it in French, but the first person to use it in English was Robert Owen. And Robert Owen set up a utopian community.
Who gives a shit? I mean, yeah, this is interesting on a certain level as a history of the term, but why does anyone care about this now? We're not at a symposium at the etymology of the word socialism, for fuck's sake.
Indiana, and he spent a lot of his life in Indiana building the settlement of New Harmony. So we have always been part of the United States, and I will add that when socialism comes to the United States, it will not be Russian or Soviet socialism.
And the funny thing is, he says, we've always been part of the United States, but when you look at his writing and, say, Satan at the Fountainhead, it's interesting who he doesn't think has always been always been part of it, or because he definitely very explicitly, very clearly excludes Jews from any of this. In fact, it's interesting that in the socialist movement here historically has been full of Jewish immigrants. I mean, amongst others. I mean, and of course also, you've had indigenous people and people of color in there from the fucking beginning. And instead, all he comes up with is some old white guys whose ideas weren't even actually particularly socialist. And at some point, he's gonna have one off at the wrist for FDR. We know that, right?
It won't be Chinese socialism or Venezuelan socialism. The socialism that comes to the United States will be a socialism rooted in our own traditions, our own history, our ongoing struggles here.
So it's gonna suck. It's gonna be really, really fucking racist and imperialist.
Democracy, the struggle for equal rights. It will be an American brand of socialism.
God, he's Destiny's fucking. He's not even paying attention. He's actually typing something up. Look at his face. He's so bored.
Rooted in addressing the issues we face here in this country. And I think it is high time we start engaging about these ideas.
Well, then let's do that. Why aren't you engaging about these ideas? Why are you talking about this other shit?
To the way socialism is widely characterized in the media, and so let's talk.
You've been talking for 4 minutes now without actually saying a single thing that anyone cares about.
Okay, I just want to get a couple things out of the way real quick, so that it doesn't feel like I'm either backpedaling later or radically change this. I'm not sure how much you know about me or what I do. I don't care about America at all as a country. I am not married to the idea of the United States. I don't really care much.
Oh God! So essentially, he just spent 4 minutes on this fucking red, white, and blue nationalist wankery, only to be told that his right-wing interlocutor doesn't give a shit. I'm sure he thought that he was bringing the A material there. He was like, yeah, I can talk, I can really blow him out of the water. I'm gonna say the fucking Pledge of Allegiance, and he won't know what to do with that, right? And he's like, yeah, actually, I don't give a fuck about the U.S., which is actually the most base thing I've heard out of Destiny in a very long time.
Making America the best place. I don't know if I'm just because I know that your pitch is pretty nationalist oriented here.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, yes, that you can't really deny that. It's very nationalist oriented, and it's going to be very okay. I can't wait to see what. This is going to be good.
If the author of the Pledge of Allegiance was a socialist or a capitalist or whatever. Typically, when I'm looking at economic systems, so ways to organize our economy, I'm usually just trying to find ways to generate the most amount of wealth, and then hopefully to redistribute it later on using tax policy or.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so Just generate the greatest amount of wealth and talk as fast as he can. These debate fuckers love to just talk fast and not say much.
Or some other type of thing. I just want to get that out of the way right now, that I don't have like any
Sure.
type of like strong nationalistic bend towards the United States. I'm not like allegiant to any particular country. I just happen to live and pay taxes in the U.S. Okay, yeah. So getting that out of the way, yeah. I mean, I guess we could jump. I guess right into the socialism thing, or how do you want to do this?
I mean, is that question directed toward me?
Yeah.
He's still dealing with the fact that the material just completely bombed.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
go right ahead. I think it's important to clarify what we mean by the terms. So if you want to begin with that, I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, sure. So I've heard socialism described in a lot of ways, all the way from some people saying that some redistribution programs are socialist. So like people will point to like Sweden and go, "Hey, look, they do a lot of social welfare. That's socialism," which I
Which
don't
is
think
bullshit.
necessarily true. All the way to people who say that like even cooperatively owned firms don't count as socialism. That's just
Well, yes, if they're within capitalism, they don't.
you still have firms, you still have people that are working for profit. They're just distributing it to themselves. That's not real socialism. Yeah, I guess we can move policy by policy point, or you can give me like what definition you're working under, or yeah.
Well, that's a very important thing because there's a lot of definitions of socialism these days. You talk to two different people, they'll give you two different definitions, right? And I think a lot of this is because of the Cold War. It's because
Okay, Jesus. He's instead of just straight up. How long is he gonna go on? Is he gonna go on for 5 minutes about the Cold War before forgetting what the question is here?
there was such a McCarthyist atmosphere of
Shit.
hysteria, and there was so much of accusing.
Hell.
People of being socialists and communists in the United States.
Hold on just a second. I've lost my headphones. Hold on. Sorry about this. Bluetooth gets a little bit fiddly.
States that it's all gotten muddled.
Oh, come on. Why is this happening?
I think Obama was labeled a communist and a fascist and a socialist. There's a lot of confusion. And I think the reason, for example, that
Sorry about this. I'm just trying to get this back on. I just have this problem last time as well. I'm not sure exactly what the deal is. This is annoying. Okay.
I think Obama was labeled a Muslim and a communist and a fascist and a socialist. There's a lot of confusion. And I think the reason, for example, that general social welfare programs, since the beginning of the Cold McCarthyist atmosphere of hysteria, and there was so much of accusing people of being socialists and communists in the United States that it's all gotten muddled. If you watch Fox News, I think Obama was labeled a Muslim and a communist and a fascist and a socialist. There's a lot of confusion. And I think the reason, for example, that many people associate socialism with just general social welfare programs is due to the fact that throughout, since the beginning of the Cold War, if people get up and say, hey, we ought to have health care in the United States.
And you aren't exactly helping when you cape for FTR and at the same time call yourself a socialist.
States for people to be provided for free. The response to the right wing, you can't do that. That's socialism, right? If people say, hey, I think we ought to provide college education to people in the United States, you can't do that. That's socialism. That's communism. So we have a generation of young people that are coming up, and the economic circumstances are a lot worse than they were during the height of the Cold War in the 50s and 60s.
Okay, Destiny looks like he swallowed something he shouldn't have.
And it's basically, the little
have a hairball?
wolf. They say, oh, you can't have free healthcare. That's socialism. They say, fine, I'm a socialist.
You haven't defined it yet. You're
and
supposed to be
that's
defining the fucking term.
Debate. Right now, and I think it's amusing, and it shows that the hysterical anti-communism has kind of taken the taint off the word, or the onus off the word. People aren't afraid of the word anymore. I think that's good. But I must say that socialism is not the government spending money. It's not progressive taxation. That kind of thing goes on in every society to some degree or other, right? I'm sitting here in New York City. There's roads outside that are paid for with wealth that was redistributed from me, the taxpayer, to build the roads. New York City is not socialist because of that, right? Some countries redistribute a lot of wealth. Some countries redistribute a little wealth. Income inequality. These things happen in every society, and that's not the...
Shit, it's happening again.
definition of socialism. The definition of socialism, that was the definition of Karl Marx, that was the definition of the Bolsheviks, that was the definition of also the British...
Actually, you can't really say that, because Karl Marx and the Bolsheviks had kind of different ideas about it. The Bolsheviks actually redefined socialism in order to move the goalposts.
Labor Party and social democracy up until like the 80s when, they removed Clause 4 from the British Labor Party's constitution. The understanding of what...
That wasn't the same. The Labor Party's definition of socialism sure as fuck wasn't the same as Marx's. The Labor Party's definition of socialism in Clause 4 was just nationalizing the important industries. Not socializing production, not the workers being in control of it. Not overcoming capitalism, but nationalizing major industries. It's welfare state capitalism.
Socialism is, that has really been the key definition that's been around for hundreds of years, that has been obscured in the aftermath of the Cold War and all this confusion.
Hundreds of years? I mean, okay. No, I mean, I guess it's going on 200. I guess that counts.
Socialism is a society where the centers of economic power function on the basis of what is good for society and not simply what is in the interests of private owners.
That is not Marx's definition. Marx's definition was that the working class controls production and natural resources. And, well, he describes it as the state, meaning the working class as ruling class. He doesn't use this vague, fucking wishy-washy bullshit definition here.
Capitalism is defined as a system in which profits are in command. Under capitalism, this is...
These are such shitty definitions. I mean, how hard is it? I mean, this, like, what the hell does it mean profits are in command? No, capitalists are in command. Profits are what they want. That is what they're operating the fucking economy to get. I mean, why, we've got good definitions for this, but I guess if you say that capitalism is a system where the means of production are privately owned, operated for profit by producing commodities for exchange value, that does run into problems if you're also going to claim that China is socialist, which he
Frederick
does.
Engels, he said the means of production only
Oh, why is this happening again?
function as preliminary transformation into capital. Or Mao Zedong, he famously said, profits are in command. Profits in command. Socialism is a society where the major centers of economic power, the banks, the factories, the major industries, operate according to what is good for society overall.
No, I mean, that's what it's supposed to do, but that is not what the socialism is. Yeah, I mean, he has to use these vague-ass definitions because otherwise he would run up against the problem that the things that he likes to claim are socialist, actual states, don't fit the definition that he uses. And so he uses this wishy-washy bullshit that is just as good for, like, fascism in some of its forms as it is for social democracy.
And that is the fundamental difference. Is production being carried out simply in the interest of profit, or is the state planning out the economy in order to ensure that growth can take place?
No. First of all, economic growth is not part of socialism. That's not part of the definition. Economic growth is a capitalist thing. The idea of economic growth as an end in itself is something that only exists within capitalism. It is one of the things that capitalism brought into the world of economics that had not previously existed. I mean, he's just so fucking,
That is the difference between capitalism and socialism.
Okay,
So when you
Dustin, if
say
you wanna-
socialism, are you implying like a fully planned economy then?
Now, well, you'd have to define what a fully planned economy means, right?
So-
Planning goes on even under capitalism. A capitalist will plan how he wants to do things in order to make his own profits. I think
True enough.
that term needs to be defined. Obviously, the Soviet model of doing things, where almost everything is run by the government, is not coming back, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what
But
I'm just trying to figure out.
socialism
Like,
has been different.
well, that's interesting that he says, obviously, that's not coming back. First of all, then what the fuck are you even advocating for? And how does it distinguish you from just a normal social democrat who happens to be very closely tied to fucking Nazis?
Different. We've seen it different in different places. The Bolivarian socialist model that we've seen developing in Latin America, the Ba'athist Arab socialism of the Middle East, socialism with Chinese characteristics in
Yeah, which is also known as fucking capitalism.
China, the socialist-oriented market economy of Vietnam. They all do things very, very differently. But at the end of the day, in all of those countries and situations, the economy functions based on what state central planners say, not on what is in the short-term interests of private owners. There are private companies, there are private corporations.
Yeah, except this is not, I mean, all of that stuff can exist within capitalism. It's just it's capitalism on a more long-term stable footing. That is literally state capitalism. That's why it's called that. And that does not actually change the fact that actually, I mean, there are all sorts of really serious achievements that really ought to be valued in a lot of the economies he's talking about. China's brought a huge number of people out of poverty, probably more than pretty much anyone else, and in record time, which is a really good thing. That doesn't mean everything else about the place is great, and it doesn't mean that it is socialist. Vietnam has done, I mean, it's a fucking miracle what they've pulled off. If you know what they were starting out from after the U.S. left, I mean, and going from there to being one of the few countries that hadn't completely fucked up the COVID response and has actually come out of it in pretty good shape. I mean, that is a huge achievement, But the thing is, that's just raising living standards and quality of life within capitalism. And you can certainly say that this sort of economy that he's talking about, this sort of capitalism with social democratic characteristics, or Marxist-Leninism, or whatever, is probably the best bet at rapidly increasing living standards, short of actually having socialism, short of actually getting rid of capitalism and having socialism. It's probably the best you can do within capitalism, but it doesn't make it fucking socialism.
But even the private companies there do what is in the interests of society. They're told what to do by the state. And I think...
Well, yeah, that which is also true in capitalism generally. Now, how much say the state has in the matter and how that works is different, but you have that in other places too. Like, you have that in Japan. You have that to a great extent in the U.S. If you look at the pharmaceuticals and tech and aerospace sectors especially, I mean, that is very much central state planning. That is, the state is just handing out huge amounts of resources, and they sort of plan out the research through what kind of contracts they hand out. I mean, and it's all a very inefficient way of doing it, because essentially the research and development that goes on is sort of incidental to what they're actually supposed to be doing, and then the state does not end up actually getting to have the patents and shit like that, so it doesn't benefit from the results of the research that it's funding. But what he's describing is something that you can find everywhere, because the whole role of the state in capitalism is to harmonize the conflicting interests of different aspects of the capitalist class, and to try to smooth out class conflict between capitalists and workers without it becoming some sort of an overt class war. I mean, what he's describing is just fucking capitalism. It's just normal capitalist shit.
That's the difference, right? And that I would argue that one of the things we've learned from the Cold War is that you need a market sector to some degree. I don't think the government should run, for example, hotels. I don't think the government should run restaurants. I do think the government should run heavy industries. I do think that the government should run...
Well, first of all, what does it mean the government should or should not run restaurants? I mean, if you mean, having politicians directly saying what's going on in the day-to-day operation of a restaurant, yeah, that sounds fucking disastrous. But if you mean that the whole thing is funded by the state, and is not run for a profit, so it can run at a loss, and it's essentially insulated from, capitalist economic fluctuations and shit, that actually wouldn't be a bad thing. In fact, I mean, it's odd for him to be saying that is what he takes away from the Cold War. Because you can actually run a pretty good fucking restaurant the way he's saying you can't. I mean, there's a lot that you could say about the DPRK, for example, but their premier restaurant, the Onyugwan, is rated very highly by pretty much everyone. People who are specialists in Korean, traditional Korean cuisine, people who who have absolutely no time for the DPRK, agree it's a fucking well-run restaurant. The food is really good. So, I mean, I don't even see why you're gonna say that. I mean, it seems like it's just a weird concession to make, and I think he's trying to play to his audience, because he figures that this is the sort of shit that a Destiny audience would immediately think was just absolutely anathema. But, I mean, I don't see why it should be. I mean, I don't think the state should exist, but I don't see why having a network of restaurants that are run, by the public sector couldn't be a really good thing if it was done properly.
On healthcare, I do think the government should run banking. But, I think people should be able to start their own business. There's...
Okay, so fucking capitalism there.
There's not an opposition to people that have their own idea and are creative.
God, I mean, give it 5 years that this guy is totally going to be on, like, on PragerU or something.
Government should run heavy industries. I do think that the government should run healthcare. I do think the government should run banking. But I think people should be able to start their own business. There's not an opposition to people that have their own idea and are creative and go out and invent something new. In fact, I think that the aim of socialism is to strengthen that. If you look at,
which is not the same thing as what you just said, though. The whole point of socialism is that the effort, the energy that goes into building profits, I mean, the way that instead of being built around everybody having to work in order to survive, to make money for capitalists in order to survive, we can put our energies towards all sorts of other shit. And all sorts of creativity would necessarily be unleashed if we don't have to waste all of our time, like, I mean, doing bullshit that we don't care about, that's only there for our, in order to make enough money to just, pay the rent or some shit. I mean, I don't see why, I mean, the fact that he immediately brings that into starting a business, I find that very interesting, because I've not heard him do that before, but, yeah, I mean, he just moves... He just becomes less fucking communist every time he opens his mouth, and he wasn't particularly communist to start out with.
Nicaragua right now, the government,
oh, shit, not again.
The Sandinista government is working very hard to facilitate micro entrepreneurs and loan money to private citizens in order to build their own businesses in coordination with the overall state central plan. And the same thing has happened in China, obviously. Deng Xiaoping famously saying that market socialism was necessary and that, poverty is anti-communist, but to get rich is glorious. And that
which is actually, I mean, to get rich is glorious. You haven't got any fucking critique of that. See, he lost his job over at RT America since RT America doesn't fucking exist. Maybe he's, like, aiming for a position over at Xinhua?
I believe socialism in the United States, I would suspect, it's not really going to be up to me. Revolutions aren't made by guys sitting on YouTube making comments.
Yeah, and I really, I mean, hope to fuck that this one wouldn't be made by you. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen because, I mean, you're just so fucking inconsistent and your ideas suck shit and you're surrounded by complete assholes. Including people who are part of an organization that wanted to get into business with the CIA and rat out leftists, the LaRouchites. Yeah, so and it's interesting, this is actually the first time I've heard him actually reflect on the idea that maybe he isn't the motor of revolution or something like that. He usually talks about this shit like he's the next fucking Kim Il-sung or something.
But it's not ultimately going to be up to me. But I would expect that in the United States, a country where entrepreneurship is really valued and individual...
Which is completely... I mean, we're just talking about Cold War propaganda. The whole idea of valuing entrepreneurship, which actually, if you look at the polls, if you look at what people really think about this sort of thing, if you really think... it turns out that they're not really impressed by it. Not as anywhere near as much as you'd think, certainly. I mean, that is literally the Cold War propaganda you were just talking about. The whole free enterprise, all that bullshit is fucking post-World War II anti-communist propaganda in order to make the U.S. system seem palatable to workers who are old enough to remember when the labor movement actually did what it said on the
initiative is really promoted, that a market sector would be part of what we develop. And worker co-ops, let me add, are part of a market sector.
He did fucking hell. He tries to discredit all of BreadTube based on the idea that they supposedly all just want worker co-ops within capitalism. And here he is saying, yeah, we'll have worker co-ops within capitalism and call it socialism. Jesus Christ, this guy. This fucking guy. And with that, it's about time to wrap it up. I will be back tomorrow. and I look forward to seeing you then. Have a good night and good luck. God, this fucking guy.